is the first method by which X-ray was produced. Then next we will move for the origin of X-rays. Origin means how the target is giving us X-ray, from where it comes, that is the origin. It comes from the atomic level, so that will tell us how these X-rays are originated at the atomic level. Right. First is the characteristic spectra, and the second one is the continuous spectra. These two are referred to the origin of X-ray. So, when you go for the characteristic spectra, let this is the atom with the nucleus at the center and the electron cloud around the nucleus. So, the electrons are here and like that all other cells. So, when this X-ray high speed electron, this is the electron with energy half mv square, which is very much energetic electron. So, when it comes and incident or strike the target, ultimately strikes the atoms of the target. Let this is one of the target we have considered from the target, one of the atom. Then what happens here? If the energy is sufficient to knock out this electron, then it will knock out, because the binding energy is very high, because its atomic weight is very high. So, it will knock out the electron from the innermost part of the atom with reference to the energy associated with the electron. So, as a result of that, to fill that vacancy, the electrons has to come from the higher orbits to fill that vacancy. Of course, keep it in your mind that 98% of the heat is generated, rest only 2% goes for X-ray, may it be characteristic or continuous. So, then when this comes, electron is now free. So, this vacancy is filled by the upper cell electrons. As a result of that, when it comes out, there is a quanta of energy defined by the atom of the target, right. So, if it is copper, then it is fixed for copper. What is the gap? That gap energy comes out as the X-ray. So, then that is called as your K series, first line is K series. Similarly, when it jumps from next orbit, if it is K alpha, next will be K beta, next will be K gamma and so on, but it is for copper target if it is copper atom. Similarly, for molybdenum and tungsten and all others. So, what happens here, if it is copper, then it is fixed for copper, it is not variable. That is why this kind of spectra is called the characteristic spectra, because it will characterize the target material from where it comes. It will characterize, if you know the wavelength K alpha, K beta, K gamma, then you can tell what kind of target is used there. That is why it is called as the characteristic spectra. Similarly, the next one is the continuous spectra, then same thing, nucleus, then the electron cloud around the nucleus, the electron is going, this is the same electron, and when it comes towards this electron cloud, because of repulsive electrostatic field, it will be deviated from its path by decelerating. Deceleration takes place, as a result of that it changes its path, and when it changes its path from here to here, it continuously decelerates. It will decelerate. So, as a result of that deceleration, since the velocity is continuously changing, the energy there comes out as X-ray continuously with different wavelength. That is why it is called the continuous X-ray spectra. So, when it comes, it goes like this. These are continuously changing wavelength. That is why it is called as continuous spectra, because continuously the wavelength are going on changing with reference to the energy, how it is decelerating. So, one is, this is also suppose copper, then in copper both characteristic as well as continuous spectra are associated with the target. Then if you show the plot, if it is lambda, this is the intensity of those radiations comes out, may be continuous or characteristic. For copper, with reference to one particular accelerating voltage applied in the tube, then you will see that it goes like this. So, this is k alpha, k beta and L series. We have shown here only k, similarly other series are also there, and the spectra will look like this, and this corresponds to lambda minimum for the target, minimum value of wavelength of the radiation that can be produced from the target. So, here it shows there is continuous as well as characteristic, they are superimposing with each other. So, when the target gives X-ray, it gives both characteristic as well as continuous. So, these are the peaks are the characteristic spectra, because there the intensity is very high, but continuously the wavelength is also changing, that is because of this continuous spectra. So, if you see when the target is giving us X-ray, it is not only continuous, not only characteristic, but combination of both. So, as per the experiment you are planning to design, you have to select your wavelength if it is monochromatic requirement. You need a monochromatic radiation, means you have to filter out all other radiations except only one monochromatic wavelength. If it is k alpha, then you filter out all others except k alpha, depending on the absorption coefficient of a observer. It will absorb all other radiations except k alpha. So, now it will become monochromatic radiation. Otherwise, it is all the time combination of both characteristic and continuous, but again characteristic is combination of many lines, k alpha, k beta, k gamma, L alpha, L beta, L gamma, but you need only one wavelength. So, you have to filter out all other radiations except only one, may it be k alpha, k beta, whatever is required, then only it will become monochromatic, otherwise it is white X-ray, combination of all wavelengths, continuous as well as characteristic. Then, so now the question is how then we will know what is the wavelength of this radiation, minimum wavelength that can be produced from the target. And as I told you, when you are going to think about an experiment with X-ray, two things are very important. One is called as the quality and the other one is known as the quantity. This quality depends on the penetrating power of the photon, how much energetic the photon is, that is decided by the quality, and the quantity is nothing but the intensity, how much intensity that radiation has. So, these are two important qualities with reference to which one can design the X-ray experiments. Then we should have to think about both quality as well as quantity to decide what kind of radiation we need for the experiment. Then if it is penetrating power, then obviously it depends on the energy of the photon. If the energy is more, it can penetrate more, like the bullet. If you throw a stone to a glass, the glass will crack, but if you fire the same glass by a bullet, it will pierce a hole of that dimension because of its energy. So, that penetrating power basically depends on the energy of the photon. Then how to control what kind of energy you need to penetrate through the material to be characterized. So, then now penetration power basically depends on this frequency. If you want more penetrating power, then it should have maximum frequency or minimum wavelength. Photon will be energetic, so it can penetrate more. Then we should have to know what is that frequency. If frequency is maximum, then obviously you can tell wavelength is minimum, that is your minimum wavelength that is required. So, now to derive this relation, this energy, if you will tell, let us say for example, if here the electron is having velocity v, but here when it comes out it is v prime. Continuously the velocity is changing because of deceleration, and as a result of that the continuous spectra is coming out. So, if you think that the whole amount of energy is converted to X-ray, then the energy of the electron there is nothing but equal to E v, applied voltage multiplied by the charge of the electron, and the same thing is now given by H f maximum. The whole energy is now converted to X-ray. With that approximation we have considering that relation. The amount of energy associated with the electron is now converted totally to X-rays. So, that is why the photon energy is maximum, H f maximum, and therefore, H f maximum is E v divided by H, or if you write this maximum in terms of minimum wavelength, then obviously you can write this C divided by lambda minimum. You know the relation. Then it is equal to E v divided by h. So, this gives us now lambda minimum is equal to C h divided by E v, right. Now, you see this side, here is 3 constants, we do not have any control over it. We cannot change the speed of light, cannot change the Planck's constant, cannot change the charge of the electron. They are not in our hand, but this voltage is in our hand, applied voltage. So, if you change the applied voltage, your lambda minimum will change, and in that way you can control the quality of the X-ray photon. The quality is controlled by only applied voltage. So, it is coming some constant k divided by V. This constant you just find out what is that constant, because they are all constant values, speed of light, charge of electron, Planck's constant, that is your k. So, k is nothing but equal to C h by E, and that is not in our hand to control, only you can control is the applied voltage V. So, if V is large, then you can tell lambda minimum is small. If V is small, lambda minimum will be more. So, lambda minimum is inversely proportional to voltage, applied voltage, and that controls the quality. The quality of the X-ray is controlled by voltage in that way. So, next you come to the quantity. So, quantity is basically the intensity, and it is very important for diffraction scattering experiments, very important. Not only diffraction scattering, but all experiments need the intensity. You should have to be very careful about the intensity part, because if the intensity is not proper at the source, then the scattered, diffracted, polarized, whatever it may be, intensity is drastically reducing, and that intensity only carries the information about your material. So, if the source intensity is not sufficient enough, then the scattering intensity, diffraction intensity is not that much of good. As a result of that, you may lose some of the information relevant to the material. It is never go for a better characterization. Therefore, the source intensity must be as high as possible, right. That is why people are now thinking about the synchrotron radiation, only for that purpose, because synchrotron radiation is much more energetic, or you can tell the intensity of synchrotron radiation is much more higher in comparison to laboratory sources. Laboratory sources are if giving the intensity, let us say x or I, then this intensity is enhanced by 10 to the power 10 times if you are using synchrotron radiation, because of the scattering and diffraction experiments. Otherwise, you may lose some of the information from the scattering and diffraction intensities. So, main motto is how to enhance the intensity, even if it is in the laboratory source, but we can raise its intensity to maximum, and that is called as the quantity of X-ray. So, when you think about the intensity, then now the question is how the intensity can be controlled, which gives the intensity, from where it comes. Then the intensity, the general relation tells intensity means it is the number of photons received per unit area per unit time when that area is kept perpendicular. The intensity can be defined as the number of photons received per unit area of the detector per unit time when that area is kept perpendicular, right. So, that is the intensity. So, that it basically depends on the number of photons, how many photons are coming to that area, then how to control the number of photons, because number of photons is controlled by filament current, that how many electrons will be emitted from the filament. If filament current will vary, number of electron emission will vary. If you need more electron, enhance the current in the filament circuit. So, when the filament current is more, number of electron emission is more, and hence the intensity will be more. So, intensity is controlled by filament current, that is the quantity which we can control, and the penetrating power is controlled by the applied voltage. So, now both are in our hand. As per the requirement, we can change the quantity as well as the quality. right. As per the requirement of the experiment, you can change both quality as well as quantity. So, quantity refers to intensity and the quality refers to the penetrating power. So, the penetrating power, you know, it is basically that is relevant to your lambda minimum, same thing. Penetrating power is inversely proportional to V. So, this V and this filament current both are in our hand, we can control. So, now controlling this filament current and the voltage, we can decide what kind of X-ray photon will be helpful for your experiment. May it be diffraction, scattering, interference, polarization, absorption, emission, whatever it may be. We have to control both of them properly before going to think about any experiment. Then now, these are about the origin, how X-ray is coming from the atomic level, both characteristic as well as continuous, and how we can control them to go for some experiment. So, the next is what are then the properties, because properties are very important when you are thinking about the application of X-ray. So, what do you mean by then properties of those X-rays? So, the you know that the electromagnetic X-ray is also an electromagnetic spectra like visible, but only difference is the energy of the photons. X-ray photons are much more energetic in comparison to X-rays. Otherwise, all the phenomena associated with visible light, they are all there for X-ray also, because that is also an electromagnetic radiation like visible. All the properties, they will go for reflection, refraction, polarization, transmission, absorption, interference, diffraction, scattering like visible light. If the conditions are satisfied, everything is okay, or if not, not possible. So, the properties are same as that of the visible radiation, except few. The importance are they can the other properties it is same as visible light, only the wavelength or the frequency that will decide about the radiation. That is the only difference, X-ray and visible light, because X-ray photons are much more energetic in comparison to visible. So, in that way you have to see, otherwise all the properties are similar to visible radiation. They can go in straight line, rectilinear propagation of light, they can reflect, they can refract, they can polarize, they can interfere, they can scatter, they can diffract, everything. All the properties associated with the visible light are applicable to X-rays also. Only you have to take care of this lambda and frequency for X-rays. Then the second is that they are quite dangerous for living cells, even they can kill the tumor cells, and we are taking advantage of that. That is called as radiotherapy in medical applications. If you want to kill some tumor or cancer cell, you have to decide the dose, and if it irradiating that cell or tumor cell, then that cell will die, right. So, that is the, and it may happen, it can go to the genetic level. The X-ray photons are so much dangerous, if you are not handling them carefully, then it can violate the genetic hormonalisms in our body at genetic level. So, you have to handle it very carefully. So, then now these are the you can tell dangerous radiations for living cells or tissues or genes. At any level it can disturb. So, of course, it is photographic films will be exposed. It is obvious, like the optical film. There are X-ray films that you have seen in the medical, they are X-ray films, they will be exposed, even photographic films will also be exposed. The most important another property is that they are ionizing the gases, because they are very much energetic. If you ionize the gas irradiated by X-ray photons, the gases will be ionized because of their energy. So, these are few important properties associated with X-rays, right. Then now, with these properties we have to think about the application part, how we can take advantage of X-rays applications. I told you already there are three main important applications, that is scientific research, then medical applications, and the third one is industrial applications. These are the three different ways in which we are taking advantage of X-rays. Now, coming to the scientific research, as you know, the X-ray was discovered in 1895, and that is the reason why in the list of Nobel Prizes, first Nobel Prize goes to the discovery of X-rays by Röntgen in the 1901. And then now still from till that day, we are now in 2020, still research work is going on and nobody can check it. It will go, right, because of many more things has to be still there to be learned. Then now, if you think about the scientific research, basically it is divided in two ways, particularly solid state physics or condensed matter physics, that is crystallography, and crystallography of course covers both macromolecular crystallography and general crystallography. There are two kinds of crystallography, right. Macromolecular I am saying because of protein and cellulosic structure, there are no more crystallography, rather it is called as the macromolecular crystallography, and in both the cases X-rays are used. So, this is one, and other one is very important again, that is called as absorption. Crystallography is a part of scientific research, and absorption of X-rays is another part in which the people are doing scientific research with the help of X-rays, right. So, now if you tell I will come to the crystallography later, but let us think about the absorption, how absorption is helping us to scientific research. You see, when you are telling about the absorption part, you think about the visible radiation. What happens, suppose this is a material of thickness 3 and the visible radiation is incidenting on that, then what happens there? What kind of phenomena are associated when the photon is interacting with the material? It may reflect, depends on the property and condition, may absorb, how much it will absorb again depends on what kind of material you are selecting. So, one is reflection, another is absorption. So, it is reflection, absorption, and rest is your transmission. Transmission depends on what kind of material you are choosing for characterization. So, from all three, not only absorption, but from reflection, from absorption, from transmission, we can collect the information about that material with which the photon is interacting, right. If you properly analyze the reflection intensity, you can learn something about the material. If you know the intensity being observed by the material, that will also inform you what kind of material it is, and by transmission also you can know what kind of material it is. So, when you think about the characterization of a material, all are equally important. Along with that, when you are telling it is reflection, absorption, transmission, I am excluding scattering, diffraction, right. It is a part of that in between, that from there we are collecting the major informations relevant to the material. So, then now absorption is, if the thickness is T, let the intensity here incidented is I 0, primary beam intensity, may it be visible or invisible, does not matter, but it obeys the same optical principle. If the intensity is I 0, then when it comes to the other side, let it be I. It must have to reduce depending on the property of the material. Then this I is nothing but equal to I 0 e to the power minus mu x or mu t. In this case, I am taking t, that is why t. if the thickness of the material is T, then the intensity is reducing exponentially with respect to the thickness, right. So, then now the question is what this mu is. This mu is called as the linear absorption coefficient of the material. How linearly it will absorb? We are not bothering about the kind of atoms, molecules involved in the path, but we are bothering only about the distance travelled in straight line. That is why it is called as the linear absorption coefficient, mu. But to collect the real informations about the absorbing material, instead of taking this mu, if you will take the volume, instead of linear, if you take volume absorption coefficient or mass absorption coefficient, it will be much better, because you can know what kind of atoms, molecules or ions are present. So, in that way usually people are going for mass absorption coefficient L m. If you know V, then of course mass is volume density, right. So, once you know the mass absorption coefficient, then all materials are known to you, what kind of material it is. If you know the mass absorption coefficient depends on the mass of the atoms or molecules, and every atom and molecule has a structure factor. If you know that, then you can tell what kind of atoms, molecules are there being absorbing the X-ray photon. So, in that way you can characterize from absorption principle, right. Absorption can also characterize the material in that way. If you know mu m, then you can know what is the material, what kind of atoms, molecules are present inside, because every atom in the periodic table has a structure factor. Every atom in the periodic table has a structure factor, and that will decide what will be the mass absorption coefficient of that atom. And if it is molecule combination of many atoms, and accordingly the mass absorption coefficient is well known, and knowing the mass absorption coefficient, you can know what kind of materials are there. That is one way of characterizing the material from absorption, right. Then the next one is the general crystallography or macromolecular crystallography. Then of course, both refers to the condensed matter physics. When we are telling the crystallography, as you know, what is the crystallography? Crystallography is no more restricted now to physics. It is a branch of science now. It applied to all sciences: physics, chemistry, life science, earth science, engineering science, medical science, everywhere. So, there is crystallography everywhere when you are telling about science. This crystallography is covering all the branches of science. So, no more it is restricted now to physics, but initially it was only physics. So, then now when you are telling about all science, then obviously the question now comes, what kind of material is that which covers all, and why it requires in all branches of science. Then if you go for the solid state physics or condensed matter physics, so what is the material or solid state physics? In that branch basically you are learning about what kind of materials or condensed matter physics. I am not telling soft condense, but only condense. Soft condense is different from condensed matter. Then what is the condensed matter physics? It is referred to solids, liquids, gases, or their combinations, or only restricted to one. When it is condensed matter physics, solids only, right. But when you go for soft condense, it covers all, right. When you tells about soft condensed matter, it goes to fluid state, gaseous state, even macromolecules. So, that is the difference between condensed matter and soft condensed matter, right. So, when you deal with the protein, cellulose, not cellulose, but the fluids, all the gels we are using in our day to day activities are under soft condensed matter. all the gels we are using are coming under soft condensed matter, right. All the creams, sunscreen, whatever it may be, everything is soft condensed matter. But only if it is solid, then you can tell it is condensed matter. And condensed matter is a soft, you can tell the condensed matter is the set of solid state physics. If that is a soft set, it is a set, and it is defined by the length order scale with which you are dealing, right. If the atoms or molecules are at a distance of atomic dimension, then it is condensed matter. Suppose there is a material and the atoms or molecules are separated by distance x. If this x length order is comparable to atomic dimension, right, atomic dimension, then only you can tell it is condensed matter, not necessarily it is solid state physics, right, because you know the solid state physics. That is why solid state physics is a subset of condensed matter physics, right. So, when the interactions are good enough, so that in between two molecules or atoms the distance is only of the length order of atomic dimension, then it goes to condensed matter physics. And for that kind of condensed matter physics, may it be soft or hard, does not matter, but we need to characterize it properly, right. Hard means condensed matter, soft is as I told. Two kinds of condensed matter, one is hard, other is soft. When it is soft, not necessarily solid, but when it is hard, obviously solid, right. So, then now may it be hard or soft, but we have to characterize the material properly in order to understand their properties, why they are behaving in that way. Then what do you mean by the characterization? Characterization means you have to see the atomic, molecular, ionic arrangement in it, that is characterization. Means the structure at atomic or molecular level you have to understand in order to explain the property or behavior of that material, that is called as characterization of any material. So, unless you know the atomic molecular arrangement, you can never characterize any material really. So, one most important part in scientific research is that in material science, that we have to characterize it properly. Characterize means understand the atomic and molecular level structure in the material, and knowing the structure you have to explain how that material will behave or what will be the property of that material. Therefore, the property is originated from the interaction of atoms or molecules in it, but first you have to know how they are arranged within the material, and to know this, X-ray diffraction plays very important role. That is why it is a signature of characterizing any material. It is a signature of characterizing any material. Again, may it be solid, liquid, gas, in any form. So, when you think about that XRD, then there is a, of course, when you are telling X-ray XRD, it refers to X-ray crystallography. That is a separate branch in crystallography, that is called as X-ray crystallography. XRD refers to X-ray crystallography, because crystallography is general. In general, the crystallography means it is a relation between geometrical shape and size of the crystal with reference to their properties, that is crystallography, right. Geometrical shape and size of the crystals with reference to the properties, that is crystallography, and it covers to all branches of science. So, that crystallography again depends on the kind of probe used. If the probe is X-ray, it is X-ray crystallography. If the probe is neutron, it is neutron crystallography, and if the probe is electron, it is electron crystallography. So, depending on the probe, what kind of probe is used, the crystallography is named. If X-ray is the probe, obviously that is X-ray crystallography. So, I am dealing with only X-ray crystallography, and that is your XRD, right. X-ray crystallography means XRD, X-ray diffraction. So, then now if you are telling it is XRD, then obviously it is a diffraction, but for X-rays, that is why it is XRD, X-ray diffraction. Then now coming to the diffraction part, as I told you, the difference between diffraction and scattering, that depends on the length order, right. If the dimension of the object, may it be atom, molecule or anything, that is the dimension of the object that you want to see, then if it is extremely small in comparison to the wavelength of the photon used, then that is called as scattering phenomena. If it is X-ray, X-ray scattering; if it is visible light scattering; if it is invisible light like ultraviolet, radio wave, microwave, anything, but everything is scattering, right. Whole electromagnetic spectra will follow that. If the dimension of the object with which the photon is interacting, if is less in comparison to the wavelength of the photon, then everything is scattering, may it be visible or invisible radiation, does not matter. Similarly, when this dimension of the object is comparable to the wavelength, no more it is scattering, rather it is diffraction. Similar to all the radiations, may it be visible and invisible. The principle is same for the whole electromagnetic spectra, and it is these two, whether it is scattering or diffraction. So, if the dimension of the object with which the photon is interacting is having very small length order in comparison to the wavelength, then it is scattering. If it is comparable, then it is diffraction, right. That is why grating diffracts visible light, sodium light, because of that reason, right. Grating diffracts visible light. The reason is this one. The grating element, there the distance that you want to see, A plus B, is comparable to the wavelength of sodium light. That is why there is diffraction of light, visible light. But if it is small in case, like the case of crystals, generally what is the length order of the crystals? Which length order you want to see in the crystals? Basically, these are nothing but the A, B, C lattice parameters, right, and the other one is your DH scale, interplanar spacing. These lengths you want to resolve from XRD, right. XRD can give you all those informations if the material is crystalline. You should have to understand what is A, what is B, what is C and what is DH scale. A, B, C are the lattice parameters, and with reference to that there are 7 crystal systems. Cubic is the simplest one, and for cubic it is A equal to B equal to C, but for all other systems it is different, right. But again they are all crystalline. Like that there are 7 crystal systems, and the simplest one is the cubic crystal where A equal to B equal to C. Again it may be BCC, FCC or simple cubic, does not matter, but all are cubic because this condition is satisfied, A equal to B equal to C, right. Then this DH scale is what? Interplanar spacing, because if you take a plane in the crystal, the atoms are there like this, another plane atoms are there like this, another plane atoms are like this. If you go in one direction, not 3 direction, in one direction, right. So, the atomic planes are there layer by layer, and if these planes are indexed by Miller indices SKL. So, if you go from one orientation to another orientation, obviously SKL values are different, but if they are parallel, all are having same SKL value like this. So, all are having same SKL value, and if you find this interplanar spacing, this is nothing but your dH scale. So, interplanar spacing means that, but if you go from one orientation of the atomic planes to another orientation, H scale value is different. So, dH scale value will be different. Knowing all those values, you can construct the unit cell of a crystal, and that way you are getting the structure of the crystal. If you understand these three, you can construct your unit cell, right? dH scale, ABC. If you have that in your mind, then you can think what kind of unit cell you have, and hence the crystal. Now, the length order I am telling, because when you are dealing with the diffraction, obviously these four parameters are in the length scale of 1 nanometer. Remember it, it can never go beyond that. Maximum 1 nanometer or 10 angstrom, all those parameters. So, XRD will never help you to collect length order information beyond that, right? It can never. So, the X-ray crystallography deals with the length order only of this 1 nanometer, not beyond that, maybe less, but cannot be more, right. And all those parameters in any crystal, whatever it may be, A, B, C value and dH scale value will never exceed 10 angstrom or 1 nanometer, right. Then, but if there are, like for example, as I told you, the macromolecular crystallography, what is that? There the length order is beyond 1 nanometer. There is the question, right. If beyond 1 nanometer, that is nanomaterials. Nanomaterial means the length order must be from 1 to 100 nanometer. Then only you can tell it is a nanomaterial, otherwise not. Once nanomaterial, the length order must be there in the material from 1 to 100 nanometer. So, as in the case of crystals or proteins, that length order is very frequent, very, very frequent. You have to go to that order length, right. So, for characterizing those kind of materials, it is called as macromolecular crystallography, where the length order you have to resolve beyond 1 angstrom till 100 nanometer, 1 nanometer to 100 nanometer. In that length order, because for example, proteins are having usual dimension 5 nanometer. So, how can you go for XRD? How it will help you? It cannot. That is why it is called as protein crystallography or macromolecular crystallography. And similarly, cellulose, same thing. The length order goes beyond 1 nanometer, right. So, therefore, the two change that. So, when it is D is going to 1 nanometer, you can tell we can go for XRD maximum, right. But if this goes in between 1 to 100 nanometer, that is called as the nanomaterials, then it is SAX with X-ray. That is why XRD is also called as the wide angle X-ray scattering, same thing, it is WAXS, wide angle X-ray scattering. But if you need the dimension of length order in between 1 to 100 nanometer, that is the nanomaterials, then obviously XRD can never help you, right. It can never help you, because it can never resolve that order length. So, only possibility is the small angle X-ray scattering, that is requirement for macromolecular crystallography, may it be protein crystallography or cellulose crystallography or any crystallography. In general, it is called as macromolecular crystallography. Then, so in that way, the X-rays applied for scientific research. I will come later on in detail of some phenomena, but not all, right. But these are the application in scientific research, for that you are learning. Then the next is the medical application. It helps in two ways in medical. One is the radiography and the other one is called the radiotherapy. So, what do you mean by radiography and radiotherapy? Radiography means you have to take X-ray photograph as you are doing in the medicals, that is called as radiography. X-ray photon will go interact with the object and it will give a X-ray picture image by absorption phenomena, that is not scattering, not diffraction, not polarization, not interference, it is by absorption. The image is given by absorption phenomena of X-ray photons when interacting with the materials, right. So, then now then of course, why you are using this radiography, because if there is any foreign element present inside the body, let us say bullet is there inside, you have to locate it, otherwise it may cause harm. Generally, it is made up of lead, and lead is very much dangerous for blood interaction. So, you have to spot it out where it is, then only the doctors or physicians will do the operation and take it out. For that, you have to go for radiography. Similarly, if there is a bone fracture, where the fracture is, unless they identify what to do, for that it needs radiography. So, either the foreign elements or the fractures, whatever it may be, but you have to get an X-ray image, because the physicians needs that, otherwise they cannot do anything, and that is called as radiography. Then the second one is the radiotherapy. To kill the cancer or tumor cells, the dose has to be identified by the physicians. What dose can kill the tumor or cancer cell, at what location it is present. After identifying them, they can use the dose and kill the cells. That is called as radiotherapy, because radiation is used for therapy, right. There are various kinds of therapy, physical, chemical. Chemical, if it is called as your chemotherapy, all of you might have heard about it. Similarly, radiotherapy with the help of radiations, it is radiotherapy. May it be X-ray, gamma ray, whatever it may be, but it is radiotherapy, because radiations are used there to do the job. And the third is the industrial. So, the industrial use basically refers to the quality of the material produced from the industries, right. Whenever you are thinking about any industry, large scale production, obviously the question comes to the quality of the material, what it is producing, whether it has the requisite quality or not, otherwise it can never be marketed, and the industry will shut down maybe after few years if the quality is not controlled properly. So, that is the most important part of any industry. If the industry is existing, because of their quality only it is existing. So, quality control is the most important part of any industry, may it be small or big, does not matter. So, then how to control the quality? So, when the material is coming out of the industry, it must have certain property for which it will be sold, otherwise nobody will purchase it. It has no market value, and unless it will have market value, the industry will shut down after few years. And to control the quality, every industry, big industries are usually having X-ray labs, right. It is the most important part of any big industry, because they have to check the quality, whether the proper material is coming out or not. If not, rectify how, right. Because for example, if you tell that steel is coming out of the steel plants, and that steel must have certain properties to be used, not that any steel will come for the application, like for defense, it requires a special kind of steel, but unless the steel is having that property, it cannot be used in defense. So, you have to identify what quality of steel is coming out of the industry, whether it is helpful or not. How to characterize then? They have to identify what are the elements present in the steel, what is the arrangement of the elements present in the steel, and for that it needs X-ray techniques like XRF, XRD, many other X-ray techniques to know the fine structure of steel, and similarly for any other materials. Any other material, textile material, whatever material is coming from the industry, everything has to be quality controlled. Quality must have to be controlled, otherwise the industry will stop, and in that way it helps us in the industry, quality control. Then the other part is, like for example, there are few machineries which are very much complicated, right. Suppose there is some defect going on inside it, like suppose there was, nowadays people are using digital watch, but remember the olden days, they are using the watches with keys, right. If something goes wrong inside that, what to do? you have to use a lens, because the parts are very minute. It is very difficult to see where is the defect. And similarly, when the industry is running, there are many more components which are that much complicated. So, if it goes wrong, then you have to identify where the wrong is, and to do that they scan that part with X-ray. Then they can locate where the defect is, and then they will go for rectification. So, in this way industry takes the help of X-rays, right. So, one is the quality control and second is the identifying the defects in machineries, right. So, next time we will go for the next thing.